Welcome everybody to the New Fly Fisher. I'm your host, Colin McEwen. In today's show, we're going to be fly fishing for whitefish. Now, this is a species I've never angled for. I'm quite excited about it. And one of the reasons I'm excited about it is because this is a species that's right across Canada and also in the United States. It's one of those accessible species that a lot of people don't think about when they go fly fishing. We're going to be talking about tackle, the techniques, the things you need to know to catch fish like this. We're here in southern Alberta, near Vulcan, on the McGregor Lake. It's going to be a fascinating show. I know you're going to enjoy it. Stay with us. In today's program, we're traveling to beautiful southern Alberta. When most people think of this province and fly fishing, they usually visualize cool mountain streams filled with cutthroat, or the mighty Bow River and its prolific population of brown and rainbow trout. However, southern Alberta is very much a prairie farming district, which also happens to possess some excellent fishing opportunities. Yes, there are horses, goats, gophers, and bales of hay seemingly as far as the eye can see. But there also exists an extensive network of irrigation canals and lakes, which are filled with fish. McGregor Lake is located near the small town of Vulcan, Alberta. That is Vulcan, as in Star Trek. In fact, this small town has capitalized on their name, and it is now a favorite destination for Trekkie fans from throughout the world. The local tourism bureau even created some interesting monuments and spaceships to help promote Vulcan as a destination for Star Trek fans. However, today we're in search of large lake whitefish on McGregor Lake. Ron Ambrose and his close friend Larry Pemberton have offered to take me out fly fishing for these wonderful fish.
Well, Lake McGregor is an impoundment, a reservoir built to satisfy irrigation. The area was settled back in the 1880s, and it's been filled by the Bow River since 1920. A canal was built from Carsland to here. It has numerous fish species in it: pike, walleye, burbot, perch, lake whitefish, and others.
Rainbow trout, I think.
And rainbow trout, they get in here via the canal from the Bow River. And because we're in a drought right now, and the lake is now 10 feet lower than normal and contains about 54% of its maximum volume. It's a good 10 feet low. And some of the bays that we normally fish are actually almost dry, so we can't fish them. The channels between the weeds are inaccessible. We can't get a boat into them now. We can't fish them from shore. Normally, when it's at its highest level, we can fish most of these bays from shore.
You've got an affordable, accessible fishing. And you've got a myriad species, and obviously a lot of fun on a fly rod.
Exactly.
People in Calgary or people that come to visit, and you don't have to hump in a long distance to get to this place.
Exactly. And one of the really great things about this fishery for lake whites, not only here but in the other impoundments like Gull Lake and Pigeon Lake and Lake Newell to the east, is that there are so many lake whites, and they're doing so well that you're allowed to take 10 a day and possess 10. And they're one of the best eating fish around. I mean, I rate them right up with perch and walleye.
Oh, right.
This is a perfect alternative for somebody to come out and learn to fly fish, because there's no trees, there's no mountains in the way. It's wide open. It's a good family event because the fishing is good and you're out in the open spaces, and it's just really a great spot for people to bring their families and learn to fly fish, and keep some fish to eat and not hurt the fishery.
One of the things we should talk about is the fact that a lot of people, and this is what I'm trying to change in my series, they think of only trout, salmon, steelhead.
Exactly.
And I'm not knocking them. I mean, I love catching all those species, in their various forms and locations. But there's so many other fish available that, like whitefish, smallmouth bass that are so much fun to catch on a fly rod, and people shouldn't ignore this, especially because, as I was talking about before, it's an accessibility thing.
Exactly.
You know, a lot of these species are really accessible. Here in Alberta, everybody thinks right away of the big rainbows and browns, but you have a multitude of other species here that are just wonderful to catch on a fly rod, like northern pike.
Exactly. Oh, yeah. This lake and another lake to the east of us, Badger, is another reservoir. Fish on.
Oh, well done.
They're here, Pimp.
That looks like a nice fish.
I'll just get them on the reel, get a little control. Here we go.
And what rod weight are you using there? 4 weight?
This is a 5 weight.
5 weight?
Okay.
There we go.
Beautiful.
Oh, look at the size of that fish.
Excellent. Excellent. See if we can't get a picture of this guy.
Now, is that an average size?
Yeah, this is about the way most of them will be. Might be a little bigger than average, but not much.
I notice that they're a bit like lake trout, so they'll roll a bit, eh?
Yeah,
When
they'll do anything, these guys, and they're very, very slippery. Like that. The reason we're in the bay, of course, is they like to come in and amongst the weeds, in the channels between the weeds, and forage. I've seen them right up in shore, within a foot of shore, foraging for shrimp, for back swimmers, or whatever they can find, whatever happens to be active at the time.
So why are the whitefish so prolific in this reservoir?
I don't know. It's just a perfect situation for them. They have bays to come in and spawn. They have bays to come in and feed that are prolific because of the weed. They have the depths to go to when the water gets low and warm. They are a salmonid, so they do have a critical temperature zone, just like the trout do. And they've got the deep depths to go to for safety and to get oxygenated water. By the way, the water in here only has a 1-year lifetime. That is, from the time the water comes in at the north end from the Bow River, it is replaced 1 year later. So it's only in here for 1 year.
So it flushes from the top.
Yeah, it's used or flushed down to Traverse. In other words, it's totally circulated within a year. So, in a sense, the water is constantly being replaced, and therefore it's fresh. You don't have a stagnant situation in the lake, and I think that goes a long way to help the fishery.
If you could explain a little bit about how you fish the different parts of the water column with a chrominid, and as you were telling me earlier, I mean that's part of the experimentation or the versatility you have to have when you're doing this type of fishing, is that you're looking in the water column to find out at what level they're at, because you've got to, like you said, put it literally in their nose, right?
Exactly. What we normally do when we have normal levels here of, we might be in 7 to 10 feet of water, is we'll start with about an average of 4 feet of leader. Now, I must say that we have a fair distance of leader from the floating line to the corky. And that's, again, these are salmonids, and they will spook if you line them with cause some concern with the fly line. So we want the corky somewhat away from the floating line. Below that, we generally use about a 4 or 5 pound test. You can call it 4X, or you can just simply use a 4 pound Maxima or something like that, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
If we're not getting any action in that 4 foot range, is usually, if you're fishing alone, you'll drop it a foot, raise it a foot, whatever it takes. Usually if you're fishing with a buddy or a couple of other guys, you'll say, hey, somebody fish at 3 feet, somebody fish at 4, somebody fish at 5. And then whoever's catching fish, we all adjust our leader length to that position.
That makes sense.
Because normally the fish will cruise at the same depth. Okay. Now, you, of course, will get them on the bottom, but if you get a hatch and you see a lot of surface activity, you probably want to bring your fly up within a foot or two of the surface, because that's where they're cruising. If you don't see a lot of surface activity, then you want to probably be down in the lower half of the column, the middle or below. And of course, we can adjust the length of the leader because we know the depth of the water. We either use the oar or our previous knowledge or a depth indicator. So it's just because we're not getting hits doesn't mean there isn't any fish going by.
Okay. And
we're probably
in terms of presentation, you know, we're so used to in fly fishing that when you do your presentation, you're trying to impart certain actions
right
on the fly. Where with this, you're not. I mean, the rig is set up such that the water action is doing that for you. You don't have to do that unless, I mean, if it's flat calm. I think this is where some of the techniques we talked about earlier, where you cast out without one of these rigs and you're doing the hand retrieve very slow.
Well, what we've got here with the ripple is we've got an assist in our presentation. We're still going to retrieve it, but we don't have to give it these little bumps that we were giving it in the slack water.
Mm-hmm.
We can just slowly retrieve it 3 or 4 pulls and then let it sit. And of course the ripple will do the rest for us. Keep it moving. We've had situations where if the fish are feeding what we call lethargically, another ice, and they're feeding aggressively, it seems right now. But if they're feeding lethargically and we've got a lot of bump going, they just ignore it because it's moving way too fast for them.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's too much. In that case, you do better in calmer water. We've caught them. I've caught them in whitecaps from shore.
And
when they're
the bobber's going up and down.
The bobber's going crazy, and they're just hitting it on every cast. Well, that's an exceptional situation, and I've only seen it happen actually once. But
what would be a good condition then? Would you say it's where we've got like this, like about a 2 to 3, maybe 4-inch chop? So it's giving a little bit of movement up and down? This
would be the maximum you'd need for a chop.
Okay.
A little bit of a ripple. The other thing too, what it does for the fish, you know, in any fishing situation, if you have a little chop on the surface, that diffuses the light, and they get a little less cautious. And they might come a little more to the surface, and they might feed a little better because they feel a little more comfortable because they can't see any danger above them. So a little bit of diffused light doesn't hurt the cause for us either. All right. There we go. To bring him in? Yeah. That's a beauty. Hey, we'll do here. Opens the net up. Okay, take out the fly. Should come out easy. Can I put them in? Okay. Isn't that great?
Ron, could you explain a little bit about how we position the boat and why? Because this is very much reminds me of the fly fishing in the UK and over in Scotland, where over there they like to drift and go cast to the downward side,
right.
The downwind side. But what you're doing here is we've anchored, we're casting downwind, and we're doing a slow retrieve. Could you go over why we do this and what the presentation is that we're trying to achieve?
You bet. In the bays, and all of these bays are weedy, and most of that weed comes from the clarity of the water, and of course fertilizer coming off the agricultural lands. In between these weeds, there are fairly flat spots. It may be sandy, maybe grassy, but they're the channels that the fish are in. And the reason we're in the bays is the whitefish in the fall and during the whole year really come into the bays to feed, because the deep part of the lake, although it's cool, doesn't have a lot of forage for them. And since they're insect eaters, and there's a lot of weed in here, therefore a lot of insect habitat, this is a great place for whitefish to come and feed. It's also a confining feature for us, the fishermen. So now we've got basically a confinement. They're in maximum 10 feet of water, which is readily fished by chironomid methods. They're in the channels between the weeds, which we can see either by using a fish finder or by sight. And the reason we're facing downwind is that we can control the fly. We cast downwind, we don't have a side wind pulling the line to the left or to the right, in which case we don't know what the fly is doing. And by casting downwind now, we're in complete control of the presentation. So we can twitch it the way we want. Now, this particular ripple that we're having now is ideal for chironomid fishing. It's not too much that it's bouncing the chironomid up and down. It's just enough that it's moving it, wiggling it, making it seem alive.
Like it's trying to struggle to the surface.
Right, exactly. So we don't have to do actually as much retrieve as you would normally when it's very calm.
You were saying that over here, I mean, one of the reasons we're fishing in this bay is because the fish are coming and looking for the chironomids, which are coming to the surface. Right. There's the weeds all around here. Do you have scuds in here as well?
Yes, we do. Most of the lakes have a good population of shrimp, the shrimp species. We have back swimmers also available, especially in the fall. And we'll see some back swimmer action if we're here in late afternoon and evening. You'll get the back swimmers start moving around, and they'll come in to feed on those. Chironomids is probably their first choice, then the scuds, and then the back swimmers. In fact, we have caught them on all those types of flies. One of the next best flies to the chironomid here is a 52 Buick, which is it's a fly developed here. It's well known everywhere. It's a shrimp imitation. It's a damsel nymph imitation. It can be several different things. And of course, we tie them up in the greens to match the coloration of the weeds. Mm-hmm. Why red chironomid works, it is almost impossible to explain. But 90% of the fish we catch in Lake McGregor and in these bays is caught on a red chironomid. And they're fairly big, and the flies we use, that is, and they're red. They may take them for bloodworms, which is the chironomid larva. Mm-hmm. But we've never seen in any fish we've cleaned, we've rarely seen anything red. They're all shrimp.
The way the watercolor works with the spectrum in terms of what
we like to think it's our expertise at presentation, but I don't think that's it. I have caught them on back swimmers in the fall. It's not something we originally, when we come out to fish, we like to start with the red chironomid, and then if the fishing's real good, we can experiment with other flies to see how they're going to do. But most of the time, the red is the most efficient fly.
Usually, lake whitefish are reclusive dwellers of the deep. However, at certain times of the year, they can be easily caught in relatively shallow water. The whitefish spawns in early winter in shallow rock or sand-bottom lake waters, usually less than 25 feet of water. The young hatch the following spring and grow large enough to leave the protective shallows for deeper water by early summer. Whitefish eggs are consumed by yellow perch, ciscos, burbot, and even other whitefish. Young whitefish fall prey to lake trout, northern pike, burbot, walleye, and probably other fish-eating predators. Adults are taken primarily by man. Lake whitefish generally grow rapidly, but this varies by region and food supply. Whitefish can reach a size of more than 20 pounds and an age of over 25 years. Unlike its larger-mouthed trout and salmon cousins, the lake whitefish has a small and exceedingly delicate mouth and is therefore confined to dining on insects, freshwater shrimp, small fish, fish eggs, and bottom organisms. Most feeding takes place on or near lake bottoms. You had mentioned that sometimes you like to use a tandem rig, which is, allowed by law here to use two flies.
Yes.
So you use a weighted one on the bottom. I think you were saying a Buick.
We actually use a weighted one at the top,
Okay.
like a beadhead chironomid, usually the red one, and then maybe a foot below an unweighted or unbeaded 52 Buick or back swimmer, or even a smaller chironomid. The key to catching whitefish is not only the retrieve, but making sure that you keep your eye on that strike indicator. The lake whites have very subtle takes. They'll swim by, suck the fly in, and spit it out before you know it. And that slight movement of the strike indicator is the only indication you have of any interest by the fish in that fly. So you must pay close attention to that strike indicator. Oh, pike! I think it's a pike. It's gone.
Now that was strong, whatever that was.
That was a pike. It broke me off. Everything. Oh, look at that. Nothing left. So that was a pike. Casting now is you don't have to be very gentle or perfect with your casting. You don't need a tight loop. In fact, usually if you're out here in the breeze, you want a fairly open loop. You want to take the fly line back low behind you and then wide over top. And that prevents, of course, being hit in the back of the head or your boat partner being hit by the fly. The presentation is not that important. The important thing is to get the fly out into the channel any way you can, but preferably a safe way. Another method is to let out a little bit of line, bring it in towards the boat, and then just turn it over and use the roll cast. It'll be wind assisted and it'll do just fine, and it'll go wherever you point the fly rod to go.
Okay. You ready? I'll bring them head up. That's a good sized fish, actually. All right.
Well done. Awesome.
Okay, and just let them go in. There we go. Well, we've just had a great day here on McGregor Lake, fly fishing for whitefish. Whitefish are right across Canada and through parts of the United States. They're a great species to angle for, especially for those who are just learning how to fly fish. They're really strong fighters. The tackle and techniques you can use to catch them are really not that difficult to master. They're a super species. People shouldn't ignore them. They're wonderful on a fly rod. For more information about what we talked about in today's show, or to learn more about our series, visit us on the World Wide Web at www.thenewflyfisher.com. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next week.
To order a copy of your favorite New Fly Fisher episode, contact us through our website at www.thenewflyfisher.com or call us at 613-836-8295. Copies of this educational series make an excellent gift for your favorite angler or friend, and they also make a good addition to your reference library. $14.95 for one VHS tape plus shipping and handling. Order 3 tapes and only pay $39.95 plus shipping and handling.